Hi, Chloe. We're going to take a look at your emotive squares project. Just kind of give you a bit of feedback on there, what I'm observing. So let's go ahead and share the screen here. All right. So first of all, good job on naming. Might not have needed to have the word finished. I don't mind having the word finished there. I think that's a good idea. Maybe I will take that into consideration the next time I offer the project in other semesters, having students put, finished, since you started the posting and then you added to it, just sort of verifying that, yeah, I did in fact add to this. Part of this project was to introduce you to some of these platforms to get you and the rest of the students comfortable with posting your work and organizing them in this way. This is going to be a real key skill that you're going to need to have. And as simple as it is in fact a skill to be able to organize information digitally and present it well. Clearly, the other parts of the project were the assemblage part, which was the additive component to the experiment. That is, you're taking the squares and you're arranging them on a flat surface. That, in and of itself, is a design exercise. It's an additive design exercise where you are taking the topic that you are working on and you're using a simple motif, in this case, a square of different sizes, scales, and then you're arranging them so that they emote the kind of energy that your topic is meant to do. After that, then it becomes actually more about your vision and your perspective. So the first part is a sort of exploration of the design principles, where you're attempting to create and generate these energies between these shapes. The second part is really about you and what your perspective is. And so with the photographs, you're exploring ways of seeing. And I say this because with some of these topics, it's very likely that your designs might be repeated, or at very least closely repeated. And so, with the initial designs that you put together with the squares, you've got 11 other classmates who are doing the same exact thing, using the same exact topics. It would be inevitable that someone is gonna repeat, at least very closely. And I do see this, particularly in your tension. This design, at least two other students so far that I've seen through these reviews have done this exact design, the smaller square turned on the diamond to put next to it. And there's a reason, I think, for that, because this is a good, effective representation of tension, right? I mean, I think it is. It's obvious. It's right there. And the reason it's a good representation is you are creating, first of all, the dichotomy of the two elements on either side. And then you have this energy in the middle right here, the energy right in the middle right here, that is that's keeping them apart, creating a tension. And the reason there's tension is the choice to work off of this diagonal. Now, you may not have sort of been consciously thinking about that. Let's create a diagonal like this, and that's going to create energy. But here's the thing, and we've mentioned it before, but line work, when it comes to the lines in a composition, horizontals are rest, verticals mean sort of life or alive or awake, diagonals are energy. And so when you're putting your composition together like this, what you're getting there is a tension, because you're getting these diagonals going next to the verticals, which is life, and then there's energy separating those two things. So it's an excellent thing that you're working with here. Now, The composition that I highlighted of those three are the most effective. And the reason for that is this has passive energy all the way around it, right? There isn't a whole lot of tension. In fact, what we see here is almost a harmony, because you've got a centrally located element here floating in what we would call passive negative space. And so it's pacifying all the energy that this might be creating. This is a step forward, but not quite there. This gets you to the point of tension. Now, you know, we're saying zoom in, but that's because it's photography. What I'm saying is engage the entire picture plane, the whole space from here all the way over to here. You know, as you can see my little screen, I'm stretching my hands. I want to work all the way from here, all the way over here, right? And I want to create that kind of balance. And I want to work from here all the way down to here in order to create a balance, right? And so I'm working with that. You can even see just intuitively, I've got this composition with this line going on here. This is coming straight down here. I've got another one over right here going on within this composition. Everything is an opportunity to take advantage of these things. So this is an excellent solution. Tension, now you're getting a little bit here, I guess more organic in terms of what you're doing. I'm not sure if we're creating the kind of tension that you're going for. And the reason is now we're creating more of a curve here. If you can see, the eye is going to sort of start right here and travel down, because you're creating what's called a continuance here. Even in this one, you're creating a continuance, which means the eye's going to grab here and pull down this way, and then come back around here and back up through here. Now, this is excellent in terms of creating movement. This is exactly the kind of thing that you want to do to create movement. However, tension kind of usually means that you are focusing in on one particular area and trying to get there to be a particular energy there. And so I would say this one doesn't quite get to the tension that we would want it to be, although this is a very effective design that we're looking at here. Cool paper, by the way. I don't know what paper this is, but I like the the sort of texture there. You've got a repeating pattern on your background, which I'm gonna just presume it's some sort of placemat or something that would go on a dining table. It interferes a little bit, all of the pattern in the background here. Not so much that I would say you got to do it all over or anything like that, but just bear that in mind. When you add this texture, it's a whole nother thing. But I do think your choice of paper here is pretty good. Anyway, composition wise, this works quite well. However, getting to tension, not so much. Again, tension here, you're getting your greatest effect here because you're closer in. Now, tension here, you don't quite get there. If there's any tension going on, it's going to be in this one. And the reason is this is the tension right here. And the reason that's tension is you got everything aiming up toward that, right? You got this large area sort of teetering on this horizontal line. What does the horizontal line do? It's peace, it's passive, no tension there. Even though you've got diamonds going on, you created a pattern across there, which creates the horizontal line, which means rest. See, these are strategies. I'm not saying these things to kind of trip you up. What I'm saying is you can use all of this to your effect, to your advantage. This is the language that we're talking about here. And so anyway, so you've got this horizontal. So now we're focused on this upper element, which is not quite running off the edge enough. The eye is still going to try to connect this. If it were cut somewhere right around here, if you can see the mouse here, somewhere around here, that would be enough room to not give it that sort of continuance, right? You get a little bit more energy going on there. So these are all things that you want to observe, and I'm pointing them out so that you can kind of think about them a little bit later. This one is an interesting thought, I suppose, but it just kind of goes nowhere. It's just a dot amongst a big texture. And I don't know that it says lonely, maybe isolated, but lonely wouldn't be it. Lonely is a comparative topic, which gets us to thinking about, when you work with the topics, thinking about what is the nature of that topic? What is it that it's supposed to communicate? Excuse me there. So this one doesn't quite get there. This is better. This is better because you're now setting up the continuance, but I think without sort of continuing to discuss the same points, you've got this edge right here. You've got not the whole picture plane. These are two elements sort of floating. Here, I think we're getting somewhere a little bit more effectively. This seems to be your better solution here, and perhaps here even better. And the reason that I say that is, first of all, again, we're addressing the edges here, which is what we would like to see, working with a whole picture plane. But here what's happening is you've got this jumble, which is, I'm going to presume is your intention is to create this large shape, right? This sort of large shape made up of multiples. You're clearly looking at the design of it, with the outside here, the in, and then outside, in, and in. These are all vertical. And then this one is isolated from the group. That's what loneliness is. It's not being by yourself. Lonely isn't being by yourself. Lonely is a comparative thing, saying, I am separated, but not necessarily by choice. Lonely is also a feeling that we try to get. The one suggestion that I would make for this would be perhaps to turn these three little guys here, these three components here, so that they're not totally straight up and down. And that is just to add a little bit more difference to the elements over here and the element here. This one is square and it's lined up. And these three are, well, you've got them a little off, but I don't know that they're off enough to really say that they're sort of not straight up and down. Maybe a little bit more, not quite, 45 degrees or anything, but just a little bit more off. That would give the sense that the thing over on the other side here is somewhat different, other than the proximity between here and here. All right. And continuing through here, it's the same kind of situation. Do we set up are we setting up a difference, or are we setting up something that just seems isolated? And these are subtle things, but something that we want to kind of pay attention to get to. Is it isolated or is it lonely? What's the difference? Again, working with the entire composition is important. The ones where you are kind of zoomed in with your image, with your photograph, it works much better. Playful, this one clearly, for all the reasons we're discussing, is a much better composition than something like this. But let's talk a little bit about the difference between design and illustration, right? Design and illustration. The question is, are we using design to get our point across, or are we trying to illustrate a picture of the component that we're working with, right? So if I am trying to evoke the concept of playfulness, and I decide what I'm going to do is I'm going to represent a bunch of children. I'm going to make a photograph of kids playing, and that's going to be playful, right? I'm going to go out and I'm going to find a bunch of kids running around the playground or something, and I'm going to make these images, and that's going to mean playful. The audience is going to get playful across, right? Well, that's an illustration. And that's actually, might catch a couple of people who are looking to be somewhat spoon-fed information. But it's really not engaging the audience. It's not inviting them to participate at all. This is a conversation. And the difference between design and illustration is, an illustration is meant to, in a lot of ways, deliver information, period. It's not meant to engage in this sort of let's talk about what this means and how you feel about it kind of thing. It's not a two-way street. An illustration tends to be a one-way sort of endeavor, where the artist is showing the audience something. A design, on the other hand, a design is meant to be something you interact with, something that the viewer sees, that they pick up on the sometimes very obvious and sometimes less obvious design choices, and they're sort of now asked to fill in some of the pieces. In other words, they're asked to bring their own sort of experience and their own bias even to it. So with something like this, right, this clearly is an illustration. As I'm seeing it, it looks like what we're doing is we've got a box here and a bunch of toys are popping out. A bunch of things are kind of coming out of it, right? This gets away from that a little bit more. By coming in like this, what we're doing is we're transforming this, which is a toy box with a bunch of stuff running out of it, to this, where now instead of it being a toy box, it's a series of line that we're asked to follow. And you would, again, as I've shown before, you're starting somewhere here. In the Western world, we tend to start compositions, viewers tend to look at a composition first in this area, unless you do a really good job of pulling them away from it. But we tend to start here. So you're starting here, and you probably started there when you were looking at it. Whoops, I've been doing that lately, moving my finger over the mouse. So anyway, it curves around in this way. The eye is going to kind of bend around like this and kind of swirl back around. This serves as a little bit of a bump so that you don't kind of go off in this direction. But it's an excellent design. And I'm not sure that we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these. We could probably create this line with only 3. And we could probably create this line with only 2. So we would take a look at this and see where we could reduce it, and that would be a way of improving it. So don't forget when we're thinking about this concept of design versus illustration, what exactly is this meant to show us? Is it a picture? Are you trying to show us it, or are you trying to share? Are you trying to actively engage us in a thoughtful kind of endeavor? Now, this is I like what you've done here quite a bit. I mean, when I say I think it's really engaging, and I think it does a lot to. I haven't seen this organization from a student yet. Kind of stacking them in this way, creating new shapes, geometric shapes out of the squares. I think it's a really clever idea. And this one, for all of the reasons we've been discussing, is the most effective of those. These little gaps are really interesting. Again, I mentioned this before. The pattern here gets a little bit in the way because it's got this sort of, not only does it have the pattern, but light is hitting off of it and giving us variations and stuff. So I don't know that it's contributing 100%, but I think this is a very effective solution to it. Again, we've seen this composition. Anytime you go really, really simple, you're in danger of it being like, wow, everybody else is going to do this. And that's fine. Put it out there and then move through it. That's the idea, is not to deny yourself the sort of designs that come to your mind, but just kind of work through them, and perhaps they don't find their way into the more advanced versions of what you're doing. So congested. And again, I like what you're doing here with the stacking. You're kind of layering them, and it almost alludes to what we're doing now with the foam core. We're going to be building up those layers, and so this is a really kind of clever way to do that. Again, this is sort of just a thing floating in space. This becomes much more engaged as we go. Congestion is really where you're leading the eye toward a place that it can't get to. That's what you're alluding to. And I'm not sure we got that in this one. We're getting there. But what we want to do is try to create a movement where the eye kind of maybe winds up here and starts somewhere. And I don't know that we quite created that line there in that. Again, this one actually, this one might be an interesting lonely because you've got this thing sort of isolated by itself with these elements all around it. If you had additional elements on the outside here, maybe a few, that could be a really interesting solution to it. Now, I do notice you have not replied yet to your peers' feedback, and I know this video might be getting a little bit long, but where I'll just wrap up by talking about the reason that you're getting feedback and what you're meant to do with it. So feedback is really all about getting information, getting someone's perspective on what it is that you've created. Now, what are you supposed to do with that? The initial sort of thought might be, well, I need to compare that to what I intended to do versus what they received, right? And you start to kind of compare and contrast. They saw this and I wanted it to be that. They saw this, I wanted it to be that. And I suppose that could be helpful to a certain extent, just to know whether you are meeting your target. But a more healthy and a more productive use of feedback is not going to be that comparative. The most effective use of feedback is to consider, how did the reviewer, how did the person who is seeing the work arrive at what you're showing them? Not whether you meant them to see that or not, not whether your intent is miles away from what they perceived. Try to consider, how did they get to what they perceive? What did I show them? How did I lead them to get to that? Right? If they're telling you they see a thing and it is not what you intended to, well, wow, that's a great learning opportunity. They saw something you didn't intend, and so therefore let's figure out how they got there, so that in future projects I can intend to do that. If I know that by doing this, and this, a viewer will get to a certain perspective. If I know that, then I can try that on somebody else and see if they get to the same place. And aha, now I've got a language. I can do X, Y, Z and get the viewer to respond in a particular way. That is the most healthy sort of use of feedback, not the comparative. Not did they say, because here's the thing, even if they say exactly what you wanted them to say, even if they said all of the things you want them to do, it's 100% success, you still want to see what made it 100% success. Because even though they got what you wanted them to, was it in the way that you would hoped and you were intending to do? Like, you gave them this sort of stimulus, but was it that stimulus that got them to their conclusion or their observations, right? So you still want to know how they got to the air. That's what you're trying to fish out of the feedback. And that's what I want you to kind of think about when you're looking at your peers' feedback to you. And also, while you're writing your feedback to others, think about trying to express how you got to your conclusions from seeing their work. What it is that you saw in the work that got you to respond in the way you're responding. So obviously, you're going to get a rubric-based grade. I have these grade forms that you'll be getting, but this was just an opportunity for me to talk about your work and give you some feedback on what I'm seeing. So we will see you in class, and I guess have a great weekend, depending on when you're viewing this. Have a great week or have a great weekend. All right, Chloe, bye-bye now.